Whispers stir across the cosmos, faint and fleeting, as if the universe itself exhales secrets too fragile for most to hear. Against the stillness of the night sky, one such secret drifts into human awareness, an object so distant in origin and so strange in presence that it demands attention. This is 3I Atlas, a fragment of matter unbound to the sun, a piece of the interstellar sea wandering into the fragile dome of Earth's observation. Its first impression is silence. No thunderous blaze, no cometary fanfare, no familiar arc that ties it to our solar family. It arrives as a faint point of light, slipping quietly among countless others, a solitary grain against the infinite black. Yet this flicker carries a difference profound and undeniable, for in its path lies evidence that it was never born under our sun's light, never sculpted by our system's gravity, but rather exiled from a star whose name humanity may never know. Throughout history, celestial wanderers have always unsettled those who gazed upward. The ancients saw comets as omens, streaks of fire that heralded disaster. Philosophers wondered whether meteors were heavenly flames or falling stars. Each new anomaly was framed by myth, fear, and reverence. Today, our language is that of science of orbits, spectra, and acceleration curves, yet the same unease lingers. To witness something foreign intrude upon the order of the skies is to feel again the smallness of human certainty. But 3I Atlas is not merely foreign, it is mysterious. Its behavior, even at first glance, suggests a refusal to obey the neat categories into which astronomers sort their discoveries. Was it a comet without a tail? An asteroid with too much light? Or something altogether different? Something whose nature remained hidden behind a mask of ordinary appearance? Some whispered of decoys, of cloaked intentions scattered across the void. Such speculation, at first, seems extravagant, and yet the universe has a way of humbling the cautious, of forcing imagination to stretch. For what, after all, is more mysterious than an object that should reveal itself but chooses not to? 3I Atlas glides onward, luminous yet reticent, hinting at patterns unseen. Its presence alone shifts perspective. For centuries, humanity mapped the planets as though they were the totality of the cosmos. The discovery of galaxies humbled that view, the revelation of dark matter unsettled it further. Now, with each interstellar wanderer that enters the sun's domain, we are reminded that the night sky is not a closed system, but a crossroads. Fragments from other worlds arrive unannounced, evidence that our solar system is but a village at the edge of a vast and crowded ocean. And so, with 3I Atlas, the question emerges not only of what it is, but what it means. Is it debris from the collapse of an alien sun, a survivor of a planetary birth or death far away? Or could it, as some dare to imagine, be deliberately cast into the void, a signal designed to distract, to confuse, to draw eyes away from something else? The answers remain shrouded, but in that shroud lies power. For in the mystery of 3I Atlas, we glimpse the unsettling truth that not all visitors to our sky arrive as what they seem. Sometimes, a whisper carries the weight of an enigma. Sometimes, a light in the darkness is more than a light. Sometimes, it is a mask. A name, once spoken, has the power to anchor the intangible into memory. For astronomers, the act of naming is not a casual ritual, but a moment of recognition, an admission that a discovery has stepped into the collective record of humanity's relationship with the stars. When 3I Atlas was etched into that record, it was not just a classification, it was a proclamation that a visitor from another star had entered the story of Earth's skies. The letters and numbers carry meaning. 3I, the third confirmed interstellar object observed by human eyes. Before it came Oumuamua, in 2017, a shard unlike anything the solar system had seen, and then the comet 2I Borisov, a frozen traveler streaking with unmistakable activity. With 3I Atlas, the lineage of interstellar wanderers gained another voice. The Atlas designation tied it to the Asteroid Terrestrial Impact Last Alert System, a network of telescopes in Hawaii designed not to chronicle poetry, but to safeguard Earth by scanning for dangerous near-Earth objects. Yet in its net, a fragment from another sun was caught. The Atlas system, scanning the skies night after night, had been designed with urgency. Its mission was planetary defense, to detect bodies that could one day fall toward Earth with catastrophic force. That such a tool, forged from the fear of impact, would reveal a messenger from the interstellar deep speaks to the unpredictability of discovery. The telescopes were not built to capture mysteries of the cosmic sea, and yet they did, because the sky is more abundant with secrets than any instrument anticipates. On April nights in 2020, the data appeared as a faint trace, a streak of light slipping through the field of view. At first, it could have been mistaken for any small comet, one of countless icy wanderers from the solar system's outer vault. Yet as measurements gathered, the calculations whispered something far stranger. Its speed was too great, its trajectory too unbound. The sun could not claim it. Its path was hyperbolic, meaning it had come from the void and would return to it. Once confirmed, the naming followed ritual. Astronomers, in their blend of precision and reverence, gave it the label 3I Atlas. That name itself became a milestone, a signpost marking the continuation of a new era in astronomy, the age when humans were no longer isolated to the traffic of their own system, but witnesses to the drifters of other stars. Names bring with them a sense of containment, yet in this case, the name underscored how little was truly known. To call it 3, I was to place it in a category with only 2 other members, both riddled with mystery themselves. To add Atlas was to remind all who spoke it that the object had been noticed only because of human vigilance, and perhaps human luck. In observatories across the world, the announcement of 3I Atlas rippled. It was not the grand revelation of a new planet or the thrilling capture of a black hole's shadow. It was subtle, quiet, a minor entry in databases at first. But among those who understood what interstellar meant, the discovery was profound. Here was matter not shaped by Jupiter's tug, not carved by the Kuiper Belt's cold, but flung from the heart of another stellar nursery. Its atoms carried the memory of a sun unseen, a birthplace whose light may never reach Earth. And as its name spread, so too did the imagination attached to it. Journalists, scientists, dreamers, and poets all turned their gaze to this faint smudge. In the act of naming, the object was drawn closer to human consciousness, becoming not just a flicker in the data, but a story, one that demanded telling, one that begged for interpretation. For every name is both a tether and an invitation, a way of saying, this exists, and we are watching. Thus, 3I Atlas entered not just the lexicon of science, but the mythos of our time. It became a question disguised as a comet, a visitor labeled but not understood. And as with every name carved into the history of astronomy, the designation was not the end of inquiry, but its beginning. Long before 3I Atlas carved its place in the sky, humanity had already been shaken by a previous encounter. In 2017, Oumuamua drifted silently into the solar system, the first recognized interstellar object ever detected. Its elongated shape, its inexplicable acceleration, and its refusal to fit neatly into the categories of asteroid or comet left astronomers bewildered. Some compared it to a shard of alien technology. Others insisted it was simply an exotic fragment of natural debris. Whatever the truth, Oumuamua left a scar of uncertainty. When 3I Atlas was identified, the memory of Oumuamua loomed large. It was impossible not to compare the two. Where Oumuamua had darted through the inner solar system, bright enough to capture the imagination of the world, 3I Atlas emerged more quietly, discovered by the survey telescopes of Atlas rather than by accident or surprise. Yet, from the first moment of recognition, the same unease arose. Could this, too, be more than it seemed? The resemblance was not in appearance, but in strangeness. Oumuamua had seemed to defy the laws of motion, accelerating slightly, as though propelled by unseen hands. No cometary tale explained it. No burst of gas visible through telescopes justified its push. Theories ranged from sublimating hydrogen ice to light sail technology built by an intelligence beyond Earth. For 3I Atlas, the questions took a different form, but the echo was unmistakable. Once again, an interstellar traveler slipped through our solar neighborhood cloaked in ambiguity. The comparison deepened when considering the timing. To find one interstellar visitor might be a miracle of observation. To find a second within just 3 years suggested something more. A pattern, perhaps even a message. For centuries, astronomers assumed such objects would be exceedingly rare, glimpsed only once in many lifetimes. Now, with Oumuamua, Borisov, and Atlas, the narrative was shifting. Perhaps the galaxy is full of such wanderers, endlessly adrift between stars, and perhaps Earth has always been watched by them, unnoticed until technology sharpened our gaze. But in scientific memory, Oumuamua remains the archetype of the unknown. It showed the world how little we understand of interstellar fragments and how quickly data can outpace explanation. For every theory proposed, counterarguments emerged, leaving its nature suspended between the mundane and the extraordinary. The echo of that uncertainty colored the reception of 3I Atlas. Few dared to dismiss it as ordinary, for the ghost of Oumuamua lingered as a reminder that appearances deceive. Some scientists framed 3I Atlas as a chance for redemption. Oumuamua had been detected late, slipping away before telescopes could fully probe its secrets. With 3I Atlas, perhaps there would be time to observe, to measure, to answer, yet already the object showed signs of slipping through comprehension. Its brightness fluctuated strangely. Its trajectory raised doubts. Like a sibling to Oumuamua, it carried with it the same air of unfinished business. To compare the two is to sense a narrative unfolding not of isolated anomalies, but of a series of messengers. First came Oumuamua, an object that unsettled the foundations of astrophysics. Then Borisov, more cometary, easier to classify, but still interstellar. And now Atlas, quiet but suspicious, another voice in a growing chorus. The pattern is undeniable. The universe has begun to reveal its travelers, one after another, as if answering questions humanity did not know how to ask. The echo of Oumuamua ensures that 3I Atlas cannot be dismissed as merely another comet. Each detail recalls that earlier mystery. Each silence resonates with the same unease. Perhaps these objects are fragments of shattered worlds. Perhaps they are probes disguised as debris. Or perhaps, as the Decoy hypothesis dares to suggest, they are distractions, lures scattered like bait across the sea of stars. In the end, 3I Atlas cannot be seen without the ghost of Oumuamua lingering beside it. One was the opening note of a haunting melody, the other, a refrain that ensures the song continues. Every discovery in astronomy begins with a moment, the instant when photons, having traveled for years or even millennia, finally meet the glass of a telescope or the sensor of a digital eye. For 3I Atlas, that moment came in April 2020, When the asteroid terrestrial impact last alert system swept its gaze across the Hawaiian sky, Atlas was built with caution in mind, a sentinel designed to detect dangerous near-Earth objects before they could strike our fragile planet. Its task was vigilance, not wonder, yet on those nights, its watchfulness revealed something extraordinary. The discovery began humbly, as all such revelations do. A faint streak of light, a moving point distinguished from the fixed tapestry of stars. On its own, it was unremarkable. Countless comets and asteroids enter the record this way, identified as wandering dots whose motions betray their solar allegiance. But soon, calculations transformed this point of light into a messenger of the unimaginable. Astronomers compared successive images, measuring the shift in its position against the background stars. From these movements, its orbit was traced. What emerged was not an ellipse, not the closed path of an object bound to the sun, but a hyperbola, an open curve that told a different story. This was not an inhabitant of the solar system. It was a passerby, unbound, destined to enter and to leave without loyalty to any planet or star. The realization stirred memories of the past 3 years. Oumuamua had slipped through like a phantom, leaving scientists scrambling to understand what they had missed. Borisov had followed, a comet whose interstellar nature was more familiar, but no less significant. And now, Atlas joined them, discovered not by chance, but by design, proof that humanity's instruments had sharpened enough to catch even these elusive wanderers. Within hours of its identification, observatories around the world joined the chase. Telescopes in Arizona, Chile, Spain, and beyond turned toward the faint smudge. Astronomers, their nights already full of surveys and measurements, diverted precious time to capture as much light as possible before the visitor slipped away. In astronomy, time is both currency and thief. The sky changes relentlessly, and opportunities are rare. The urgency was palpable. Behind the telescopes stood the people whose lives revolve around such discoveries. Teams of scientists, technicians, and analysts, often working in obscurity, felt the gravity of the moment. To stumble upon an interstellar traveler is to glimpse the unreachable, to hold in data the story of another star system's violence or birth. For some, it was the culmination of careers spent watching the sky, a reward for vigilance. For others, it was a reminder of how much remains hidden, how fragile the line is between ignorance and revelation. Reports soon spread beyond observatories. Scientific telegrams announced the discovery, rippling across academic circles. Within days, the object had been catalogued officially 3I 2020 F3, or more familiarly, 3I Atlas. For the public, it was another headline in a world already crowded with noise. But for the scientific community, it was a moment of collective astonishment. Another doorway opened into the unknown. What made this discovery striking was not just the object itself, but the context. Humanity had only recently accepted that interstellar objects could be detected at all. Before 2017, such wanderers were theorized but unseen, considered too rare and faint to capture. Now, within 3 years, 3 separate objects had been confirmed. The odds had shifted. The universe was beginning to feel more porous, the gulf between stars less empty. And so, the discovery of 3I Atlas became more than an entry in a catalogue. It became a symbol of a new era, an age when interstellar debris is no longer hypothetical, when our instruments are sharp enough to catch whispers from other suns. It also became a mirror of uncertainty, for even in its first days, 3I Atlas refused to fit comfortably into the molds of comet or asteroid. What was seen in those April nights was not only a point of light, but the beginning of another mystery, one that deepened with every observation. As the first wave of calculations spread through the astronomical community, attention turned from the mere fact of discovery to the trajectory itself. In celestial mechanics, orbit is everything. It is the fingerprint of an object's origin, the imprint of forces both past and present. For 3I, Atlas, its orbit revealed not familiarity but strangeness, a path carved through space that unsettled expectations. Ordinary comets follow ellipses, their journeys bound by the sun's gravity. From the depths of the Oort cloud or the icy Kuiper belt, they fall inward, blaze briefly in reflected light and vaporized gas, and then retreat once more into darkness. Even hyperbolic comets, flung outward by planetary encounters, carry the fingerprints of their solar birth. But the orbit of 3I Atlas carried no such trace. Its trajectory was not the residue of a planetary kick, but an ancient exile from another star. The numbers spoke with clarity. Its velocity relative to the Sun exceeded the threshold required for escape, marking it as unbound from the start. No interaction with Jupiter or Saturn could explain its entry. Its speed had been written into it long before it approached the solar system, and in this trajectory lay the first whisper of suspicion. It did not glide in along the plane of the ecliptic, like most bodies formed within our neighborhood. Instead, it cut across the solar system at an angle, indifferent to the architecture of planets. To astronomers, this was a confirmation of its interstellar nature. Yet to others, the geometry hinted at something more unsettling. The path was too precise, too efficient in threading the solar system without collision, almost as if plotted. Was it chance? Probability insists it must be. But imagination, confronted with such precision, cannot help but stir with darker questions. Compounding the unease was the irregularity in its brightness. Typically, comets reveal themselves with a predictable pattern. As sunlight warms their icy surfaces, gases sublimate, forming a coma and often a tail that brightens and dims in calculable rhythm. 3I Atlas, however, offered confusion. Its brightness fluctuated in ways not entirely consistent with expectations. At times it appeared too luminous for its size. At others, it seemed muted, as though cloaking its true dimensions. Telescopic data added to the mystery. Unlike Borisov, which paraded as a classic comet with a visible tail, 3I Atlas appeared subdued. If gas and dust were venting, they did so faintly, almost reluctantly. To some, this suggested it was an asteroid disguised in cometary clothing. To others, it meant the comet's activity was unusually weak. Yet the ambiguity persisted. Every explanation raised as many doubts as it resolved. The strangeness of its orbit magnified these uncertainties. An object that arrives on a hyperbolic trajectory with inconsistent brightness cannot be comfortably filed away in the neat drawers of classification. Scientists debated whether it was a comet fragment that had broken apart before discovery, a body already exhausted of volatile ices, or something far less ordinary. In whispers, speculative voices asked whether its strangeness might be intentional, the signature not of randomness, but of design. The orbit, in its silence, became a canvas for projection. It spoke of exile, of distance traveled across unimaginable gulfs, and of a story that began around another star. Yet it also suggested purpose, or at least the illusion of it. To track its path across the solar system was to watch a stranger move through a crowded room without brushing against anyone, a quiet precision that unsettled even as it fascinated. For astronomers, the task remained clear: measure, record, predict. For philosophers and dreamers, however, the orbit of 3I Atlas was a question draped in mathematics. It raised the possibility that in the motions of interstellar bodies, humanity is not merely reading the debris of the cosmos, but perhaps glimpsing deliberate signatures. Whether true or not, the mystery deepened. The trajectory was not simply a path, it was an enigma, a riddle scrawled in gravitational ink. Brightness is the language by which the universe speaks to those who listen, yet brightness can deceive. When astronomers turned their instruments toward 3I Atlas, the first reports of its luminosity seemed familiar. Comets brighten as they draw near the sun, their surfaces releasing gas and dust in a luminous halo. At first glance, 3I Atlas appeared to follow this script, but as the weeks passed, its light betrayed inconsistencies that unsettled even seasoned observers. Some nights, the object seemed too bright for its calculated size, its glow hinting at either an unexpectedly reflective surface or an active coma that telescopes could barely resolve. On other nights, the light dimmed inexplicably, as though its core retreated into shadow. Such fluctuations could be explained by rotation, with different surfaces reflecting sunlight unevenly, or by the unpredictable venting of gases. Yet, the data resisted tidy categorization. Instead of a coherent pattern, astronomers recorded a series of mismatched notes, as if the object's brightness were a melody missing half its chords. This irregularity deepened suspicion. With Borisov, the interstellar comet before it, the activity had been unmistakable. Jets of gas, a classic tale, a brightness curve that followed the physics of sublimating ice. With 3I Atlas, the evidence was subtle, ambiguous, almost evasive. If it was a comet, it was one reluctant to reveal its cometary nature. If it was an asteroid, it carried a shine too erratic for rock alone. What then was it? Astronomers began to speculate about its surface composition. Perhaps it was coated with unusually reflective material, a crust polished by millennia of cosmic radiation. Perhaps it harbored exotic ices, venting in ways earthbound models could not predict. Or perhaps, some suggested, the fluctuations were the result of fragmentation, a body splitting silently into smaller pieces, each altering the balance of light. But another interpretation lingered at the edges of discussion, one seldom voiced in academic papers, but present in late-night conversations and speculative forums. What if the irregular brightness was not a natural phenomenon at all? What if it was a kind of camouflage, a mask designed to mimic cometary behavior while concealing a different truth? To call an interstellar object a decoy is to step beyond the safe boundaries of science into the domain of speculation, yet the very strangeness of its brightness invited such thoughts. For in the cosmos, light is both revelation and disguise. A faint halo could be the breath of gas, or it could be engineered reflection. A dimming could mean rotation, or it could be a shadow cast deliberately. The philosophical implications of such speculation are immense. To imagine 3I Atlas as an intentional construct, a shard shaped to appear natural while hiding its essence, is to confront the possibility that humanity is not merely observing debris, but artifacts. Whether true or not, the irregular brightness sparked this tension, a tug of war between scientific conservatism and the human urge to imagine. For the astronomers who tracked its flickering light, the challenge was methodological. Photometric data must be precise, stripped of atmospheric distortion, calibrated against known stars. Each fluctuation had to be verified, each anomaly tested against mundane explanations. Yet even as the data piled up, clarity receded. Like a lantern seen through fog, the glow of 3I Atlas suggested form but refused detail. The puzzle of its brightness became a story in itself, a reminder that the universe often reveals itself through contradictions. Here was an object bright enough to catch our eyes, yet dim enough to escape certainty. Here was a comet that refused to behave like a comet, a fragment that refused to settle into classification. In that refusal lay the first real shock of 3I Atlas. a silence not of absence, but of deliberate ambiguity. Comets are storytellers. They reveal their nature in unmistakable ways, the vaporous coma blooming as ice turns to gas, the trailing tail pointing away from the sun, the jets of activity betraying volatile substances locked for eons in frozen stone. To see a comet is to see transformation, to witness the silent dialogue between sunlight and ice. Yet with 3I Atlas, this dialogue was muted. The traveller remained silent where it should have spoken, withholding the luminous language that comets have always shared. When telescopes watched it closely, astronomers expected the familiar signs. They anticipated a glowing shroud enveloping the core, dust streaming outward in graceful arcs. Instead, they found little more than a faint smudge. A weak haze clung to it, yes, but far less than its brightness had implied. No dramatic tail arced across the sky. No jets erupted with the vigor of a classic comet. Compared to Borisov, whose activity had left no doubt, Atlas seemed reluctant, even resistant, to reveal its cometary identity. The absence was not merely aesthetic, it was scientific. Without a robust coma or tail, measurements of composition became difficult. Astronomers could not easily determine the ratio of ices, dust, or carbon-based molecules. The spectrographs yielded only whispers, faint signatures that hinted but did not confirm. In science, absence is itself a kind of data, and here the absence raised more questions than answers. Was 3I Atlas a fragment, broken from a larger body whose volatile reserves had already been exhausted? Was it a relic so ancient that its ices had long since sublimated into space, leaving behind a hollow husk? Or was its silence deceptive, masking processes invisible to our instruments? Some wondered if exotic ices, hydrogen, nitrogen, or others not commonly found in solar comets, might sublimate differently, refusing to create the bright displays we expect. But the silence carried another weight, one not bound to physics alone. Comets have always been read as signs, from omens of disaster in medieval skies to markers of cosmic cycles in ancient myth. The failure of 3I Atlas to perform this role left an eerie void. It was as if the cosmos had sent a messenger but had muted its voice. For those inclined towards speculation, the absence was suggestive. A comet that refuses to reveal a tail is like a letter sent without words, a mask concealing intention. Could an interstellar object be designed to mimic natural bodies, its activity deliberately subdued? Could this be the first glimpse of a cosmic decoy, a body shaped not by chance, but by purpose? Even cautious scientists felt unease. The normal explanations stretched thin, their edges fraying against the stubborn silence. Papers framed the object in cometary terms, but the caveats multiplied: unusual activity, faint outgassing, ambiguous brightness. Beneath the technical language, the truth lingered. 3I Atlas refused to conform. The silence where there should have been speech became the defining feature of the object. Unlike Oumuamua, whose acceleration startled, or Borisov, whose activity reassured, Atlas left astronomers suspended between categories. It was neither comet nor asteroid in any comfortable sense. It was both and neither, a puzzle that resisted closure. In this resistance lies its power. Science thrives on anomalies, on the stubborn details that refuse assimilation. 3I Atlas, in its silence, became a mirror for human uncertainty, a reminder that the universe does not owe us clarity. Sometimes, what drifts into our sky is not an answer, but a question wrapped in light too faint to read. Shock in science is not always born of spectacle. Sometimes it arises from the stubborn refusal of nature to follow the rules, from the quiet defiance of an object that resists every attempt at categorization. With 3I Atlas, The shock unfolded not in a burst of light, nor in a sudden revelation, but in the dawning realization that what should have been simple was anything but. When the first orbital models confirmed its interstellar trajectory, astronomers felt the thrill of recognition, another fragment from beyond the Sunday. Yet as measurements deepened, excitement gave way to unease. For every new observation contradicted expectation. The brightness was inconsistent, the coma faint, the tail nearly absent. It was not luminous enough to behave like an ordinary comet, and yet not inert enough to pass as a silent rock. It was, in short, a contradiction moving through space. The shock lay in the failure of prediction. Cometary science rests on patterns, the physics of sublimation, the equations of orbital mechanics, the reliable dance of dust and gas in sunlight. Borisov had obeyed these laws, a perfect textbook example of an interstellar comet. Oumuamua had broken them outright, forcing speculation of unheard-of ices or alien technologies. Atlas seemed to hover between these extremes, half compliant, half defiant, neither rule-abiding nor rule-breaking, but something in between. This ambiguity gnawed at the scientific mind. In physics, phenomena are expected to settle, to yield to explanation. When they do not, they become cracks in the edifice of understanding. Atlas was such a crack, subtle but widening, for each attempted model collapsed under its own contradictions. Too much brightness for an asteroid, too little activity for a comet, too slow to mimic propulsion, too precise to be dismissed as random. The unease spread beyond technical papers. In conversations, astronomers admitted a discomfort difficult to articulate. Atlas felt wrong. It was not simply that the data were incomplete. It was that the data themselves seemed to resist belonging, as though the object were deliberately positioned at the edge of classification, forcing hesitation, denying certainty. Such resistance carries philosophical weight. In a universe governed by laws so elegant that Einstein could describe gravity as the curvature of space-time, the refusal of an object to fit is unsettling. It undermines confidence, whispers of possibilities beyond the neat frameworks humanity has built. To scientists trained to find order, this is the most shocking experience of all. The suggestion that the cosmos may harbor objects designed not merely by chance, but by a principle outside our current reach. Some framed the anomaly as an artifact of observation. Perhaps the brightness variations were distortions of limited data, or the coma weaker than expected because the object was smaller than assumed. These explanations soothed, but only partially. Too many variables remained unaccounted for. The very persistence of doubt ensured that the shock endured. And so, the scientific community confronted the possibility that interstellar objects are not merely rare curiosities, but profound challenges to our categories of knowledge. Atlas forced astronomers to admit that even after centuries of charting comets, asteroids, and meteors, there remain visitors that defy comprehension. The shock, then, was not theatrical but existential. A faint traveler, drifting quietly through the solar system, managed to unsettle centuries of accumulated certainty. It whispered that humanity is still a child beneath the stars, confident in laws that might yet prove fragile. And in that whisper lay the power of 3I Atlas, not in what it revealed, but in what it refused to reveal. In the face of ambiguity, science turns to memory. When a mystery resists explanation, astronomers search not only the sky, but the archives, the vast repositories of images, spectra, and survey data collected night after night, year after year. For 3I Atlas, the moment of discovery in April 2020 was only the beginning. The next step was to ask, had it been seen before, lurking unnoticed in older images, its faint light captured long before anyone knew to look? The process is meticulous, almost forensic. Teams sift through digital records from sky surveys Pan-STARRS in Hawaii, Catalina in Arizona, the Sloan Digital Sky Survey, and countless smaller observatories. Each archive is a diary of the cosmos, recording faint smudges, streaks, and pinpricks of light. Somewhere in those diaries, 3I Atlas might already have left a trace. Astronomers call these recoveries, the recovery of an object in older images taken before its official discovery. A single frame, once overlooked, can extend the observed arc of an orbit by months or even years, sharpening predictions and refining trajectories. For interstellar objects, recoveries are precious. Oumuamua had slipped through too quickly for many. Borisov was caught with more luck. For Atlas, scientists hoped the archives might yield forgotten glimpses. Indeed, faint traces were found, pixelated hints buried in survey images, dots so subtle they required careful cross-checking against the calculated orbit. Each confirmation lengthened the timeline, extending the window of study. Yet even these older images deepened rather than dispelled the mystery. The brightness was inconsistent, as it had been after discovery. The coma remained faint, elusive, barely distinguishable from noise. In the cold memory of digital files, the object remained just as uncooperative as in real time. The search through archives was not merely technical, it carried a deeper resonance, like leafing through the past in hope of uncovering forgotten messages. What if Atlas had been seen years before but dismissed as ordinary? What other interstellar travelers had already passed through unseen, their stories erased by the blindness of limited instruments? Each archival search whispered of the vastness of the unknown, of how little of the cosmos humanity has truly noticed. For some, the archive work underscored the fragility of knowledge. Here was an object whose entire recorded presence spanned only months, yet its journey had lasted millions of years. The imbalance was humbling, a life of wandering across gulfs of interstellar darkness, reduced to a handful of frames and spectral graphs. How much of its story remained hidden in the darkness between exposures, beyond the reach of human instruments? Others drew darker reflections. If Atlas were indeed a decoy, as some speculated, perhaps its faintness was deliberate, a strategy to ensure it remained hidden in plain sight, visible only when it chose to be. The gaps in the archival record might then be not failures of technology, but part of a larger disguise. Such thoughts, while speculative, echoed in the quiet spaces of late-night observatory discussions. Ultimately, the archival pursuit emphasized continuity. 3. Atlas was not a sudden apparition but part of a long, slow trajectory, stretching back through centuries of time and light. Each recovery added a stitch to the tapestry, but the image remained incomplete. It was a reminder that science, no matter how advanced, is still piecing together fragments, weaving stories from scattered traces. The archives had spoken, but only in whispers. They confirmed the presence of the traveler. They refined its orbit, but they withheld its essence. Like every other step in the study of Atlas, the search through history yielded not closure, but complexity, another layer of silence in an object already defined by what it refused to reveal. Every great mystery in science becomes a conversation. Some voices defend the safety of the familiar, arguing for explanations grounded in established physics. Others push toward the edge, daring to suggest ideas that unsettle, even provoke. With 3I Atlas, this debate ignited quickly, for the object itself seemed to invite contradiction. Its faint, irregular coma suggested cometary activity, yet its muted tail resisted that identity. Its brightness flickered strangely, refusing to follow models. And above all, its interstellar origin raised the stakes. Here was matter from another sun, carrying secrets humanity had never touched before. Among the cautious voices were those who insisted on restraint. They argued that the object was simply a fragment, a piece of a larger comet that had disintegrated before full observation. Perhaps the jets of gas were too weak to form a dramatic tale. Perhaps its shape, rotation, or composition conspired to create misleading signals. In this view, the oddities were quirks of observation, not signs of the extraordinary. Yet others were less convinced. For them, the inconsistencies were too persistent, too deliberate in their refusal to resolve. They recalled Oumuamua, with its anomalous acceleration and the way that explanations stretched into speculation about exotic ices or even alien probes. If one interstellar object could defy expectation, why not another? Could Atlas, too, be an artifact of something more than natural processes? The debate grew sharper as papers circulated, conferences convened, and informal discussions spilled across digital platforms. Some astrophysicists proposed unusual models of volatile materials, hypothesizing that hydrogen or nitrogen ices, rarely encountered in solar comets, might sublimate in ways that mimicked Atlas's erratic glow. Others leaned toward fragmentation theories, suggesting we had not seen a single intact body, but rather the remnants of one unraveling in silence. And still, the speculative voices pressed further. If the galaxy is teeming with civilizations, could not some choose to scatter decoys, objects designed to appear natural while serving other purposes? The word decoy appeared seldom in print, but it lived in the margins of discussion, a thought experiment too intriguing to abandon. Could Atlas be a distraction, meant to draw attention away from something else? Could it be camouflage, a vessel disguised as debris? Such questions divide science not by evidence, but by philosophy. To some, speculation beyond the natural is reckless, an invitation to fantasy. To others, it is essential, for only by daring to imagine the improbable can humanity prepare for the possibility of truth. The debate over Atlas revealed this tension, not just between scientists, but within the very nature of inquiry. How far should one reach into the unknown before falling into illusion? The object itself, indifferent to the controversy, drifted onward. Its faint light continued to register in telescopes, each photon a stubborn fragment of data. But interpretation is human, and interpretation splintered. The conversation around 3I Atlas became a chorus of doubt, conviction, speculation, and restraint. Each voice added to the resonance of the mystery, each disagreement amplifying the sense that here was no ordinary visitor. In that cacophony lay a truth both unsettling and beautiful. Science, at its heart, is not consensus, but process the wrestling of minds with phenomena that resist capture. Atlas, silent and evasive, became the perfect catalyst for such wrestling. It forced astronomers to confront the limits of knowledge, to measure not only the object itself, but the boundaries of their own imagination. The voices of doubt did not silence the mystery. They gave it power. For in questioning what Atlas was, humanity found itself questioning what it means to recognize the unfamiliar, and whether the cosmos, in its vastness, may hold not only fragments of nature, but artifacts of intention. Gravity is the most faithful law in the cosmos, a force so steady that it binds galaxies together and bends the paths of light. It is the language by which astronomers read the motions of the heavens, and its equations are trusted with almost religious certainty. Yet with 3I Atlas, even gravity seemed to whisper of something unsettling. When its trajectory was modeled with exquisite care, small deviations emerged, shifts in motion that could not be explained by gravitational attraction alone. At first, these deviations were subtle, almost ignorable. A few meters per second of excess velocity here, a slight curve in its path there. To the untrained eye, they might have vanished into the noise of measurement, but astronomers deal in precision, and precision allows no indulgence. The models of Newton and Einstein are unforgiving. If an object moves differently than predicted, the discrepancy demands explanation, and so the whispers of anomaly grew louder. For comets, non-gravitational accelerations are common. Jets of sublimating gas push gently against the nucleus, altering the trajectory in ways that can be measured. But such accelerations usually come with visible signs: a bright coma, a streaming tail, a clear venting of matter into space. With 3I Atlas, the expected signatures were faint or absent. The acceleration was there, but the cause was elusive. It was like hearing footsteps in an empty hall, sound without source, motion without evidence. Some attempted to explain the anomaly with exotic ices. Perhaps hydrogen or carbon monoxide sublimated invisibly, creating thrust without bright jets. Others suggested fragmentation, that pieces of the nucleus were breaking away, subtly shifting its motion. Yet, even these explanations left unease, for the degree of acceleration seemed disproportionate to the faintness of its activity. And so speculation spread. Could the anomaly be artificial, like a sail catching the pressure of starlight, propelling the object as a vessel rather than a rock? The comparison to Oumuamua was unavoidable. That earlier visitor had also displayed unexplained acceleration, fueling theories of alien light sails. To see echoes of this in 3I Atlas was to feel the return of a haunting possibility, that interstellar space may hold not only debris, but craft. For many scientists, such thoughts were anathema, too speculative for serious discourse. Yet the anomalies lingered. Gravity does not lie, and the numbers spoke with unsettling clarity. Something beyond gravitational pull seemed to be at work, however faintly. The philosophical weight of this realization was profound. If gravity, the most trusted of cosmic laws, could not account for the motion of a single small traveler, then either something natural but unknown was at play, or humanity was glimpsing the work of forces far beyond its comprehension. Neither possibility offered comfort. And yet, the object drifted on, indifferent to debate. Its path was a riddle inscribed across the void, a line of motion that asked more than it answered. For astronomers tracing its course, the lesson was humbling. Even in the age of space telescopes and particle colliders, the universe still holds the power to surprise, to defy, to remind humanity that certainty is fragile. The whispers of anomalous gravity became one of the central puzzles of 3I Atlas, joining its inconsistent brightness and muted activity. Together, they formed a triad of contradictions, a portrait of an object that refused the comfort of classification. Whether fragment, relic, or decoy, Atlas revealed itself not through clarity, but through the subtle defiance of expectation. When astronomers confront anomalies, their first instinct is not wonder but repair. The cosmos is a machine governed by equations, and when its gears appear to slip, the task of science is to search for the missing cog. With 3I Atlas, the anomalies piled up, brightness that wavered unpredictably, activity too faint for a true comet, a trajectory bent by non-gravitational forces without visible cause. Each irregularity demanded a model, and one by one, the models failed. In the first months of study, teams across the world published explanations. Perhaps 3I Atlas was a fragment of a larger comet that had shattered before entering the solar system, leaving behind a weakened core incapable of sustaining a tail. But the object's light curve resisted this idea. If it had fragmented, its brightness should have faded steadily or scattered into smaller companions. Instead, the luminosity flickered in erratic pulses as though driven by an unseen hand. Others proposed that exotic ices, such as hydrogen or nitrogen, lay beneath its crust. Such substances could sublimate at distances where water ice would remain frozen, releasing thrust without producing a dramatic coma. Yet laboratory models showed that these ices would erode too quickly, vanishing long before reaching our telescopes. The timeline did not match, the theory frayed. Still, others argued for rotational tumbling. Perhaps the nucleus was spinning chaotically, presenting reflective facets at odd intervals and venting from regions hidden from view. Yet the brightness shifts were too irregular, lacking the rhythm expected of a tumbling body. Instead of a pattern, astronomers saw noise. The failures accumulated like discarded drafts of a story. Each attempted explanation provided a temporary comfort, only to collapse under the weight of new data. What emerged was not resolution but a widening void, a sense that the object defied not only current models but the very categories in which those models resided. For scientists, such resistance is a paradox. The discipline thrives on anomalies, for they are the seeds of discovery, yet too many unsolved anomalies can erode confidence in the frameworks themselves. With 3I Atlas, every failure forced a reconsideration. Were the models incomplete, or was the assumption itself flawed? Perhaps the object was not simply an outlier, but evidence of something unimagined, something that required not adjustment, but reinvention. The frustration was palpable. In conferences, astronomers presented slides dense with equations, only to conclude with the same word: inconclusive. Observatories turned their best instruments toward the traveler, gathering spectra and light curves, yet the results read like riddles. Even silence, the absence of gas, the absence of dust became data, but data that pointed in no clear direction. And so the conversation turned speculative. If models of natural physics failed, perhaps something beyond the natural was required. Could the object be an artifact, engineered to evade classification? Could its anomalies be features, not flaws? Such thoughts lingered at the edge of discourse, too radical for most journals, but impossible to banish. In its refusal to conform, 3I Atlas became a mirror. It reflected not only the limitations of our instruments, but the limits of imagination itself. Every collapsed model reminded humanity that the universe does not bend to expectation, that certainty is provisional, and that the unknown has the power to humble even the most sophisticated of sciences. The comet that was not a comet, the asteroid that was not an asteroid, 3I Atlas, stood as a rebuke to classification. And in its quiet defiance, it asked a question no model could yet answer. Was the failure ours, or was the object itself designed to resist? By the middle of 2020, a refrain began to circulate in observatories and in quiet online discussions: the comet that refused to be a comet. The phrase was not an official designation, not a line written in the careful language of scientific journals, but a sentiment that captured the unease of the community. For 3I Atlas had all the trappings of a comet: the faint haze, the interstellar trajectory, the glimmers of volatile activity, yet each of these features arrived, muted, incomplete, as though the object were playing the role without conviction. In astronomy, comets are expected to reveal themselves. Their behavior is predictable. Sunlight awakens them, ices sublimate, dust erupts, and a tail unfurls like a banner in the dark. But Atlas defied this rhythm. Its coma remained fragile, its tail all but invisible. The data suggested sublimation, but the evidence never sang in harmony. It was, at once, too comet-like to be dismissed as inert rock, and too rock-like to be embraced as a comet. This refusal unsettled the taxonomies of science. Astronomy thrives on classification: comets, asteroids, dwarf planets, meteors, each category a box into which the universe can be sorted. To encounter a body that fits awkwardly, that spills across boundaries, is to confront the fragility of those categories. Atlas forced astronomers to ask, do we understand what a comet truly is, or have we only defined what comets have been in the narrow laboratory of our solar system? Some argued for humility, reminding their peers that the galaxy is vast and diverse. Objects born under alien suns might carry chemistries and structures unseen in local bodies. To expect them to fit solar system definitions is to demand that the universe conform to parochial rules. Others, however, felt a deeper discomfort. For Atlas did not simply expand categories, it seemed to resist them deliberately, as if its very essence was ambiguity. That word deliberate lingered. No scientific paper declared it, but in late-night conversations and speculative essays, the idea arose, what if the refusal itself was intentional? What if Atlas was not misclassified, but unclassifiable by design? If it were a decoy, a construct meant to pass as natural, then its half-cometary, half-asteroidal disguise would be precisely what one might expect, just convincing enough to avoid suspicion, just strange enough to compel endless debate. The power of this idea was not in evidence but in psychology. Humanity is conditioned to seek patterns, to label, to categorize. An object that denies categorization gnaws at the mind, demanding attention far beyond its physical significance. Atlas, faint and fragile in the sky, grew enormous in imagination, precisely because it refused to fit. For scientists, this became both a frustration and an opportunity. On the one hand, papers filled with disclaimers, caveats, and unresolvable contradictions. On the other, the object became a symbol of the frontier, a reminder that discovery is not the neat ordering of facts but the confrontation with chaos. Atlas embodied that confrontation, forcing astronomers to look not only at the object but at the assumptions embedded in their science. And so the phrase endured. The comet that refused to be a comet. It captured the essence of Atlas, not as a body of ice and rock, but as a challenge, a question disguised as a traveler. It was a mirror held up to human certainty, reflecting the fragility of classification, the hunger for explanation, and the possibility that sometimes the universe does not wish to be explained. From the edges of speculation, a new idea began to stir, unsettling, fragile but impossible to dismiss once spoken aloud. What if 3I Atlas was not merely an odd comet or fragment of alien rock? What if it was something else entirely, a decoy? The notion emerged in whispers, never in the official journals, but in conversations where imagination was allowed to walk freely. Scientists, philosophers, and curious laypeople alike toyed with the possibility. A decoy, by definition, is an object whose appearance is meant to mislead, to draw attention away from truth. Hunters use them, strategists deploy them, nature itself crafts them in mimicry and camouflage. Could the cosmos, or perhaps intelligence within it, operate by the same logic? In the case of Atlas, the argument was seductively simple. Its behavior was neither cometary nor asteroidal, but a performance of both. It showed enough haze to suggest sublimation, but not enough to confirm it. Its brightness shifted too erratically for a stable rock, yet its tail was almost non-existent. The irregularities seemed to form a pattern of contradiction, as if designed to pull observers into endless interpretation without resolution. A puzzle that devours attention is, in essence, a perfect distraction. Such a thought echoed an earlier unease with Oumuamua. That first interstellar object had carried hints of strangeness, acceleration, without visible cause, a cigar-shaped silhouette, a silence that felt almost deliberate. Some had speculated it might be a probe, an artificial craft. For Atlas, the possibility deepened. If Oumuamua was the question, perhaps Atlas was the answer, not a revelation, but a diversion, But from what? If Atlas were a decoy, then its purpose would not be to announce itself, but to conceal something else. A military strategist would call it misdirection. A biologist might call it mimicry. A philosopher might call it illusion. Whatever the term, the concept rattled the scientific mind. To imagine that the stars are not only sending debris but cloaked signals, objects engineered to appear ordinary while harboring purpose. To suggest this is to invite skepticism, and rightly so. Science thrives on restraint, on demanding evidence before belief. Yet the strangeness of Atlas gave the speculation room to grow. Its refusal to fit categories became fuel for the imagination. If it were natural, why so ambiguous? If it were artificial, what better disguise than ambiguity itself? The decoy hypothesis did not claim certainty. Rather, it lived in the liminal space between explanation and doubt, where science meets philosophy. It reminded humanity that the cosmos is vast, and intelligence, if it exists elsewhere, might not reveal itself directly. Perhaps it prefers to mislead, to test, to cloak its presence behind masks of stone and ice. In this way, Atlas became more than an astronomical object. It became a mirror of suspicion, a reminder that perception is not truth, and that even in the clean mathematics of orbital mechanics, there is room for deception. Whether by nature or by design, Atlas embodied the idea of the decoy, leaving humanity to wrestle with the possibility that the universe is not only stranger than we imagine, but stranger than we are prepared to admit. The decoy hypothesis, once whispered, inevitably invited its darker sibling, the shadow of technology. If 3I Atlas were not merely a natural fragment, then what hand or what intelligence might have crafted its ambiguity? To consider this possibility is to walk the thin line between science and imagination, yet history reminds us that the line itself is often porous. In nature, deception is everywhere. Moths mimic dead leaves, anglerfish lure prey with false lights, orchids sculpt blossoms that resemble insects to entice pollination. Evolution teaches that survival often depends not on brute force, but on disguise. Why should intelligence, if it arose elsewhere in the galaxy, not use similar strategies? To craft a vessel that looks like debris, to scatter decoys across the interstellar sea, would be a logical extension of this principle. The question is not only could it be done, but why would it be done? Here, speculation sharpens. Some imagined reconnaissance, a probe hidden in plain sight, disguised as a comet, so that curious civilizations would dismiss it as ordinary. Others imagined distraction objects meant to draw attention away from other, more significant presences. Still, others suggested communication, not in language but in paradox, an object that refuses classification as a way of prompting inquiry, a cosmic riddle designed to test perception. The unsettling thought is that humanity may already have encountered such shadows of technology. Oumuamua, with its inexplicable acceleration, had opened the door to this possibility. Avi Loeb, among others, famously suggested it might be artificial, a light sail drifting across the void. If so, Atlas might represent a continuation of the theme, another visitor cloaked in natural disguise, its contradictions too neat to be coincidence. For astronomers grounded in physics, these ideas remain intolerably thin, supported more by absence than presence. Yet absence can be as provocative as presence. The lack of a tail, the lack of expected brightening, the lack of a clear explanation, each gap whispered of design, not randomness. It was as if the object were built to exploit the blind spots of human categorization, sliding neatly between the definitions of comet and asteroid, never resting in either. To contemplate this is to feel both awe and dread. Awe, because the existence of such technology would confirm that intelligence has flowered elsewhere, across the stars. Dread, because deception implies motive, and motive suggests intention beyond our comprehension. A decoy is never innocent, it is always in service of a larger game. In this way, Atlas became less an object than a thought experiment. It forced humanity to confront the possibility that the tools of deception might extend far beyond Earth, that the cosmos may harbor not only mysteries of physics, but strategies of concealment. Whether or not it was true, the idea alone changed the tenor of the debate. Scientists asked sharper questions, philosophers widened their horizons, and ordinary observers gazed at the night sky with fresh unease. If Atlas were natural, its ambiguity was chance. If artificial, its ambiguity was purpose. In either case, the result was the same: humanity's encounter with the possibility that technology may not always reveal itself openly, but may instead arrive cloaked in the guise of nature, whispering through silence rather than declaring itself in light. History holds a quiet archive of mistakes, times when natural phenomena were mistaken for artifacts of intelligence, and moments when artificial signals were dismissed as noise. The story of 3i, Atlas, and the whispers of its possible disguise draws strength from these parallels. For humanity has long wrestled with the tension between what is natural and what might be intentional. In 1967, radio astronomers Jocelyn Bell Burnell and Anthony Hewish detected a series of pulses unlike anything ever recorded. Regular, rapid, and precise, they seemed too orderly to be natural. The signal was nicknamed LGM-1, Little Green Men, half in jest, half in awe. The world held its breath until the source was revealed, not extraterrestrial intelligence, but the first discovered pulsar, a neutron star spinning with uncanny rhythm. What had looked like design was simply nature's strange precision. Decades earlier, canals on Mars had stirred similar debate. Giovanni Schiaparelli's maps of linear features were interpreted by Percival Lowell and others as evidence of artificial waterways, proof of a Martian civilization managing scarce resources. The truth, revealed with sharper telescopes, was far less dramatic. Illusions of optics, artifacts of perception rather than engineering. Nature had been misread through the lens of hope and fear. And yet, there are stories that move in the opposite direction. In the mid-20th century, military radars picked up mysterious signals bouncing back from the ionosphere. Some were dismissed as atmospheric quirks until carefully studied, revealing technologies of human origin that had been hiding in plain sight. Artificial signals, too, can masquerade as natural, escaping notice until curiosity sharpens. These episodes illuminate a dangerous truth. Humanity is vulnerable to both types of error. We mistake the natural for the artificial, and the artificial for the natural. The lesson is not caution alone, but humility. The boundary between design and accident is blurred, and the cosmos offers countless chances to misstep. 3i Atlas sits squarely in this tradition of ambiguity. Like the pulsar, it may prove to be a natural phenomenon, misunderstood in its novelty. Like the Martian canals, it may be projection, shaped more by imagination than evidence. But there is also the possibility that it lies on the other side of the ledger, that its strangeness is not accidental but intentional, not confusion but camouflage. The philosophical echo is haunting. If civilizations older and more advanced than ours exist, would they not exploit this ambiguity? Would they not use the frailty of perception as a shield? A decoy works only because its prey confuses it for truth. Humanity's history shows how easy such confusion can be. Thus, when astronomers debated Atlas, they did so not only in the language of physics, but in the shadow of history. They knew that every classification could be overturned, every certainty undone. They knew that their instruments, no matter how sharp, are still filtered through human minds with human biases. and they knew that the cosmos has humbled every generation before them. The parallels remind us that Atlas is not just a question of ice and dust, but of perception itself. To call it a comet, an asteroid, or a decoy is not merely to describe an object, but to declare how humanity sees, and in that act of seeing, the line between truth and illusion remains as fragile as ever. Albert Einstein once described the universe as not only stranger than we imagine, but stranger than we can imagine. His equations of general relativity had bent the foundations of physics, replacing Newton's certainty with a cosmos where space curved, time stretched, and gravity was not a force but the warping of reality itself. In the strange case of 3I Atlas, many turned again to Einstein's legacy, hoping that the framework of relativity could shed light on a mystery that resisted classification. Relativity, after all, governs motion. It explains how light bends around massive objects, how time dilates in strong gravitational fields, how stars and planets trace their paths through the silent geometry of spacetime. For interstellar objects like Oumuamua, Borisov, and Atlas, relativity provides the canvas on which their trajectories are drawn. Yet here was an object whose brushstroke seemed irregular, its curve too sharp, its pace too restless. Was the anomaly real, or was it simply our inability to measure with sufficient precision? Relativity does not fail easily. It has survived every test, from the bending of starlight in eclipses to the timing of pulsars and the detection of gravitational waves. And yet, if the cosmos does contain phenomena that appear to slip through its grasp, we are forced to ask, is the failure ours, or is there something in the universe Einstein's equations cannot yet hold? The whispers of acceleration in Atlas recalled Oumuamua's strange push, a motion unaccounted for by visible forces. Some argued this was proof of exotic outgassing. Others noted how thin such explanations became, stretched across data like gauze over a wound. Could Einstein's framework accommodate such anomalies? Perhaps if unseen fields, dark matter interactions, or subtle relativistic effects were at play, but none fit comfortably. Here the philosophical tension emerged. Relativity is a theory of elegance, of smooth curves and predictable distortions. Atlas was an object of jagged contradictions, a traveler whose silence mocked elegance. To fit it within Einstein's universe required contortions, assumptions upon assumptions, until the theory bent almost as strangely as the space-time it described. And yet Einstein himself might have welcomed such discomfort. He often reminded his peers that anomalies are the seeds of progress, that every crisis in physics is an invitation to deepen understanding. If Atlas defied relativity in practice, perhaps it was not a failure but a clue, a fragment pointing toward a richer theory yet to be born, just as relativity itself once grew from the cracks in Newton's laws. To invoke Einstein, then, was to feel the weight of continuity. Humanity has always stood at thresholds, from Copernicus's heliocentric vision to relativity's bending of space and time. Perhaps Atlas is another threshold, not of planetary motion but of cosmic perception, forcing us to confront the possibility that interstellar visitors may not obey the tidy rules we expect. The unsettling thought is that relativity, for all its brilliance, may not be the final word. And in that silence, the silence of a comet that refused to behave, the silence of anomalies unexplained, Einstein's unquiet universe whispers again. It reminds us that the cosmos has not finished its revelations, and that even our most trusted theories may be but stepping stones across an ocean of mystery. Stephen Hawking once warned that humanity should be cautious in listening for voices from the stars. His concern was not born of fear alone, but of history. When cultures separated by oceans first encountered one another on Earth, the results were often catastrophic for the less advanced. If the same principle applied on a cosmic scale, then to seek contact without caution might be to invite danger. Against the backdrop of 3i Atlas, his words echoed with renewed force. For here was an object that carried the unease of disguise, neither comet nor asteroid, neither bright enough to explain nor silent enough to dismiss. It drifted across the solar system like a riddle. To some, it was only a shard of rock and ice, shaped by physics in ways unfamiliar. To others, it resembled the very kind of silent watcher Hawking had warned against, not broadcasting signals, not declaring itself, but slipping by as if taking measure of the worlds it passed. Hawking speculated that advanced civilizations might send probes instead of messages, silent machines designed to observe, catalogue, or even manipulate from afar. The advantage of such probes would be their subtlety. They would not shout across the void, but whisper, blending into the background of natural objects. What better form could such a machine take than a faint, ambiguous traveler, a decoy comet, a disguised asteroid, an object that astronomers themselves could not easily define? In the debates surrounding Atlas, these warnings took on philosophical weight. If Oumuamua's acceleration had hinted at propulsion, and if Atlas's contradictions suggested disguise, then perhaps humanity had already witnessed the very watchers Hawking imagined. The possibility remained speculative, unsupported by conclusive data. But speculation itself is revealing, for it shows the degree to which such anomalies gnaw at certainty. The deeper reflection lies not in proving or disproving the hypothesis, but in what it means for humanity's posture toward the cosmos. If interstellar visitors are probes, then the universe is not a silent expanse but a field of surveillance. If they are natural but strange, then the universe is still stranger than we can fathom. In either case, Hawking's warning stands. We may not be the observers alone, but the observed. The unsettling thought is compounded by scale. Our solar system is vast, and Earth's gaze limited. Countless small bodies slip past unnoticed each year, and only in recent decades have our instruments sharpened enough to catch them. If even one among them were more than it appeared, how many others might have passed unseen, their purposes invisible, their presence unrecorded? The history of astronomy is full of missed chances, of objects glimpsed only after they were gone. Atlas itself was fleeting, already fading even as debates ignited. To reflect on Hawking's words while watching Atlas drift away is to confront the possibility that silence itself is a form of strategy. A watcher need not speak to be effective. A decoy need not declare its purpose to succeed. In the end, the fear is not of what Atlas was, but of what it may represent, that we are not alone in the act of watching, and that the stars may hold intelligences for whom concealment, not contact, is the wiser course. The deeper astronomers looked, the stranger 3i Atlas became. What had begun as a faint point of light soon revealed itself as a puzzle that multiplied with every observation. Instead of clarifying, the data clouded. Instead of resolution, the evidence fractured into contradictions. The mystery did not shrink with study, it expanded. Brightness curves showed irregular flickers that could not be reconciled with simple rotation or venting of gas. Spectra hinted at volatile materials, yet the expected coma remained stubbornly faint. Its orbit, indisputably hyperbolic, left no doubt about its interstellar origin, yet the measured accelerations did not align cleanly with known cometary physics. Each answer birthed more questions. Each theory unraveled as quickly as it was woven. The more scientists attempted to frame the object within known categories, the more it resisted. It was a comet without a comet's voice, an asteroid with too much brightness, a traveler whose silence spoke louder than signals. Where Borisov had been textbook, Atlas was heresy, and heresy in science is the seed of both discomfort and discovery. This was the escalation, the sense that 3i Atlas was not just unusual but actively defiant, a contradiction that grew sharper the longer it was studied. In academic papers, the language grew cautious, anomalous, uncertain, requires further investigation. But beneath the careful tone was frustration, even awe. For some, Atlas had become less an object than a mirror of ignorance, reflecting how unprepared humanity was to interpret visitors from beyond. The implications spread like ripples. If Atlas defied explanation, then perhaps interstellar objects as a class were stranger than imagined. Perhaps our definitions of comets and asteroids, built on the parochial sample of the solar system, were too narrow. Or perhaps the strangeness pointed outward, towards something not natural at all, engineered camouflage, deliberate ambiguity, the very essence of a decoy. The emotional impact was profound. To watch Atlas through telescopes was to feel the presence of the unknown intruding into the familiar. It was not bright, not dramatic, not spectacular. It was subtle, almost dismissive, and yet its refusal to yield meaning made it terrifying in a way that fireballs and supernovae never could be. Those phenomena explode with clarity, Atlas whispered with enigma. In this deepening mystery lay a new kind of fear, not of collision, not of impact, but of incomprehension. The terror was intellectual, existential, the fear of not knowing what one is seeing, of staring at a thing that drifts past silently, carrying with it the possibility of purpose. For if it were a decoy, then purpose was implied, and purpose suggested intent. The story of 3i Atlas thus entered its most unsettling phase. The more it was watched, the less it was understood. The more data accumulated, the more fragile the frameworks became. Instead of illumination, the object cast shadow. Instead of knowledge, it left the taste of paradox. It was, in the end, not just an astronomical body, but a challenge, a reminder that even in the era of space telescopes and particle colliders, the universe can still slip past us, enigmatic, indifferent, and unsolved. In time, the conversation around 3i Atlas took on an almost spectral tone. Astronomers, accustomed to cataloguing rocks and ice, began to speak of it in metaphors as though only poetry could capture what science could not. It was described as a phantom, a presence that appeared briefly in the sky only to dissolve into ambiguity. Like a ghost moving through a house, it left no clear evidence of its purpose, only disturbances in the air it passed through. This phantom quality became the very heart of the unease, for every measurement suggested not absence but concealment, a faint coma without a tail, an orbit written in hyperbola, yet tinged with unexplained acceleration, brightness that whispered of activity but refused to announce it openly. Each of these traits, taken alone, might be dismissed as error or chance. Together, they resembled a mask. Atlas seemed less like a body and more like a performance. The idea of a decoy sharpened here, not as fantasy but as metaphor. If a decoy is something that diverts attention, then Atlas had already succeeded. It had drawn the gaze of the world's astronomers, commanded papers, conferences, debates. It had consumed thought and imagination far beyond its tiny mass. Whether natural or not, its ambiguity functioned as misdirection, pulling humanity into a vortex of speculation while its true nature remained obscured. What troubled many was the efficiency of this ambiguity. A true comet reveals itself in drama. An asteroid carries silence without contradiction. Atlas chose neither path. Instead, it lived between categories, in the very liminal space where human certainty collapses. That space, historically, has always been fertile ground for error. The canals of Mars, the pulsar signals mistaken for alien intelligence, the cosmic rays that once seemed like messages. To dwell in that space is to court illusion. And yet, What if illusion is the point? A phantom need not announce its presence to be effective. It need only unsettle, to remind those who see it that they cannot be sure of what they are seeing. If Atlas were truly a decoy, then its power lay not in revelation but in haunting, in leaving humanity with questions that could not be answered even after it had vanished into the dark. Philosophers seized upon this. They spoke of how the human mind is drawn more strongly to ambiguity than to clarity, how mystery lingers longer than fact. In this way, Atlas became less a scientific object than a cultural one, a modern myth clothed in the garments of astronomy. It reminded the species that the unknown is not only out there, but here, drifting silently past, refusing to yield its name. As Atlas faded from telescopes, the phantom metaphor became more literal. It disappeared not with a bang, but with a dimming, leaving only archival data, fragmented spectra, incomplete models. What remains now is not certainty, but presence, the sense that something passed by and looked back, even if only with the eyes of coincidence. A phantom in the sky, perhaps nothing more than rock and ice. Or perhaps, as some dared to whisper, a mask placed deliberately in the heavens, a decoy meant to test the gaze of those who watched. Camouflage is not an invention of war alone. It is a law of survival woven into the fabric of life. In forests, insects wear the shapes of leaves, fish carry the shimmer of water, and predators move unseen until the final moment. If nature perfects such deception on Earth, what might intelligence elsewhere devise among the stars? When astronomers studied 3I Atlas, many found themselves haunted by this analogy. For the object seemed to exist in disguise, a body whose every feature was muted, obscured, suggestive, yet inconclusive. Its faint coma hinted at activity, but never bloomed into certainty. Its brightness betrayed inconsistency, as if surfaces were polished to reflect unpredictably. Its trajectory spoke of exile from another star, yet its subtle accelerations raised the suspicion of something more deliberate. Like a creature of camouflage, Atlas appeared natural enough to pass unnoticed at a glance, yet strange enough to hold attention once examined. The hypothesis of cosmic camouflage did not rest on evidence alone, but on philosophy. If advanced civilizations exist, they may have reason to hide their presence, to shield their instruments or probes from detection. What better disguise than the common debris of the cosmos, comets, asteroids, fragments of shattered worlds? No civilization would waste energy sending radiant signals when the perfect cloak lies ready in the natural order itself. The galaxy is littered with rubble. To hide among rubble is to vanish. And in Atlas, humanity faced the uncomfortable possibility of such vanishing. If it were natural, then its ambiguity was coincidence. But if it were artificial, then its ambiguity was intent. The distinction is everything, and yet the evidence yielded neither. Science pressed its instruments against the silence, but silence itself is the most effective camouflage. The eerie efficiency of the disguise raised further questions. Was Atlas alone, or was it one among many, a single mask in a theater of countless decoys drifting unseen through interstellar space? If even one such body were artificial, then the galaxy might already be seeded with watchers, disguised as fragments, moving invisibly past civilizations too cautious or too arrogant to notice. To speak of cosmic camouflage is to confront human vulnerability. Our instruments, though powerful, are finite. Our categories, though useful, are narrow. We see only what our definitions allow us to see. If Atlas exploited those limits, if it existed precisely at the edge of classification, then its success as a disguise was complete. For the surest sign of camouflage is not suspicion, but dismissal. The philosophical weight of this possibility is immense. Camouflage implies not only concealment, but strategy. Strategy implies intention. And intention, once admitted, forces humanity to confront a universe not of indifferent stars, but of players. Whether benevolent, indifferent, or hostile, the very existence of such players would change everything. In Atlas, then, lay a haunting reflection. If natural, it reminded us of the strangeness of matter born beyond our Sunday. If artificial, it reminded us of our blindness before intelligence greater than our own. In both cases, it forced us to see the sky not as a map of certainty, but as a field of disguises, where truth may pass unseen, cloaked in the very fabric of the ordinary. The search for answers turned, as it always must, to the tools of the present. Humanity's eyes in the sky telescopes, scattered across mountain tops and deserts, satellites orbiting far above Earth's atmosphere, became the front line in the effort to decode 3I Atlas. Each photon it shed was precious, each flicker of light a clue in a case where evidence was vanishing as quickly as the visitor itself drifted away. The Atlas Survey telescopes in Hawaii had been the first to notice it, but soon the wider network of global observatories joined the effort. Pan-STARRS contributed additional imaging, charting its faint trail across the stars. The Subaru telescope, with its massive mirror and wide field of view, captured data of its spectral signature, straining to separate truth from noise. Even the great eyes of Chile's Atacama Desert instruments at the European Southern Observatory bent their gaze toward the traveler, collecting what fragments of light they could. Each tool offered a piece of the puzzle, but none brought resolution. Spectroscopy revealed faint hints of volatile gases, but not the clarity of water or carbon compounds seen in ordinary comets. Photometric studies traced fluctuations in brightness, but their irregularity defied neat interpretation. Orbital calculations grew more precise, yet the small non-gravitational accelerations lingered, unexplained. The object seemed to taunt the very instruments designed to decipher it, offering glimpses of data while withholding the coherence of a full picture. For astronomers, the experience was both exhilarating and exasperating. Rarely does the universe present such enigmas within reach of measurement. But 3I Atlas was not cooperative. Its faintness, its speed, and its transience conspired against certainty. The deeper the instruments probed, the more ambiguous the results became, as if the object existed at the very edge of what human technology could perceive. Still, the pursuit was relentless. NASA coordinated observations, the Minor Planet Center logged every measurement, and amateurs with powerful backyard telescopes added to the collective record. Each observation mattered, for interstellar visitors do not linger. In a few months, it would fade into invisibility, leaving only data behind. The philosophical undertone of this scramble was unmistakable. Here was a moment when all of humanity's instruments, forged through centuries of progress, were marshaled against a single faint traveler. And yet, even with this arsenal of technology, the object remained evasive. Was this limitation proof of nature's complexity? Or was it evidence of design, camouflage crafted to exploit the thresholds of our perception? The tools themselves became part of the story. They revealed not only the object, but the limits of sight. For every spectral line measured, there were countless others lost in the noise. For every image captured, there were millions of moments when Atlas slipped unseen through the darkness. The pursuit underscored a humbling truth. The cosmos offers only what our tools are ready to catch, and beyond that lies silence. In the end, the present instruments did what they could. They mapped, they measured, they archived. They gave us fragments, shards of knowledge, enough to confirm the strangeness but not to resolve it. And so 3I Atlas remained what it had always been, a question wrapped in light, slipping quietly away while humanity strained to listen. The gaze of science does not stop with the present. It looks ahead, designing ever more powerful instruments to extend the reach of human sight. As 3I Atlas slipped into the darkness, fading beyond the grasp of existing telescopes, astronomers turned their thoughts to the tools of tomorrow, devices that might catch the next interstellar visitor before it escapes. Foremost among these is the Vera C. Rubin Observatory in Chile, a giant eye built to scan the heavens with unprecedented speed and depth. Scheduled to begin full operations in the mid-2020 seconds, Rubin's legacy survey of space and time will photograph the entire visible sky every few nights, detecting faint, fast-moving objects that might otherwise go unseen. In the case of another Atlas-like visitor, Rubin could catch it earlier, track it longer, and yield data far richer than the fragments gathered in 2020. Where Atlas lingered only briefly in human awareness, its successors may be captured in detail from the moment they cross the boundary of our perception. Meanwhile, the James Webb Space Telescope, stationed far beyond Earth's atmosphere, offers infrared sensitivity capable of probing the thermal signatures of distant bodies. Though Webb did not target Atlas in time, its instruments could dissect future interstellar travelers, detecting heat, composition, and the faint chemical whispers of their surfaces. To observe a decoy, if one exists, Webb's data might reveal what ground-based telescopes cannot, a signature inconsistent with ordinary rock and ice. Other missions extend hope further. The European Space Agency's Comet Interceptor is designed to wait in space until a suitable target is found, then launch into pursuit. If a new interstellar comet were discovered, this craft could be redirected to intercept it directly, capturing images and samples before the visitor fades. Such a mission transforms speculation into possibility. Instead of guessing from afar, humanity might one day fly alongside an object like Atlas, watching its disguise crumble or confirm itself under direct scrutiny. Particle detectors and solar observatories also play their roles. Instruments aboard spacecraft like Parker Solar Probe and Solar Orbiter, though designed for other purposes, occasionally detect dust and energetic particles from small bodies. If such a craft were lucky enough to cross the path of an interstellar traveler, it could collect data from the heart of the enigma. Even our planetary defense systems, once focused solely on asteroids that threaten Earth, are now seen as potential tools for unlocking interstellar mysteries. This forward-looking arsenal reveals more than technological ambition. It reflects humanity's determination not to be caught unprepared again. Oumuamua came and went before anyone could react. Borisov was observed with greater care, but still vanished swiftly. Atlas left behind contradictions and silence. The next visitor, astronomers vow, will not slip away so easily. Yet, there is an irony in this resolve. The very act of preparing to study such objects assumes they will come again, that the cosmos will continue to send its wanderers through our sky. And if the decoy hypothesis carries even a shadow of truth, then perhaps this assumption is correct not by chance, but by design. Perhaps the watchers, if they exist, will send more. Perhaps the camouflage will only grow subtler as our instruments sharpen. Thus, humanity waits at the edge of capability, its eyes sharpened by technology, its imagination sharpened by doubt. The Rubin Observatory, the Webb Telescope, the Comet Interceptor, all are tools not only of science but of vigilance, standing ready to ask whether the next faint smudge of light is mere debris or something far more deliberate. Beneath the scientific puzzles of 3I Atlas lies a deeper and more unsettling connection, the possibility that its contradictions may touch the same mysteries that haunt cosmology itself. For in its faint, ambiguous behavior, its subtle accelerations, its refusal to shine or dim in predictable ways, some saw echoes of a larger enigma, one that stretches not across a single object but across the entire universe. Dark energy. Dark energy is the name given to a phenomenon we cannot see, cannot touch, and yet know must exist. It is the invisible pressure accelerating the expansion of the cosmos, forcing galaxies apart faster and faster with every passing billion years. First revealed through observations of distant supernovae in the late 1990 seconds, it shattered assumptions about a steady or slowing universe. Suddenly, physicists were forced to admit that most of reality is shaped by something they cannot explain. The connection to Atlas is not literal, but philosophical. Both represent forces that mock human understanding. Both behave in ways that contradict models. Both seem to move with intentions hidden from the equations designed to describe them. Where dark energy accelerates galaxies, Atlas displayed accelerations too subtle to be reconciled with visible activity. Where the cosmos reveals its expansion in faint light curves of dying stars, Atlas revealed its strangeness in the flickering of brightness across telescopes. Some theorists speculated, cautiously, that interstellar objects like Atlas could serve as probes of dark energy itself. If the vacuum of space is not empty but alive with fields and fluctuations, perhaps these travelers carry signatures of that interaction. Could their irregularities be not mistakes of measurement, but reflections of deeper physics? Could their evasive behavior whisper not of camouflage, but of a universe whose very fabric resists comprehension? Others extended the metaphor more boldly. If dark energy is the backdrop of cosmic acceleration, perhaps decoy-like objects are its microcosm fragments of matter whose purpose, or appearance of purpose, is to remind us of the limits of understanding. Just as dark energy forces cosmologists to accept ignorance on the grandest scales, Atlas forces astronomers to accept ambiguity on the smallest interstellar scales. In both cases, certainty dissolves, replaced by humility before mystery. The unsettling implication is that Atlas may not be an isolated enigma, but a local symptom of the same strangeness that drives the universe itself. Its faint silence may be a reflection, not of design, but of a cosmos where laws are incomplete, where forces still unnamed shape both galaxies and stones. And yet, in human imagination, the line between the physical and the intentional is thin. If the universe itself deceives, then what is the difference between natural camouflage and artificial decoy? Both unsettle, both elude, both demand that we ask questions whose answers remain veiled. Thus, the connection to dark energy transforms Atlas from a cometary puzzle into a philosophical mirror. It reminds us that the cosmos is filled not with certainty, but with shadows, and that sometimes the anomalies of a single traveler are echoes of the mysteries that govern the whole. If dark energy represents the enigma of expansion, then the multiverse represents the enigma of possibility. For decades, physicists have wrestled with the notion that our universe may not be singular, but one of many, a single bubble in a vast cosmic foam. Each bubble may carry its own laws of physics, its own constants, its own history of matter and light. To contemplate the multiverse is to accept that what we call reality may be only one page in an infinite library. In the mystery of 3I Atlas, some found unsettling resonance with this idea. The speculation grew not from evidence but from metaphor. Atlas behaved like an interloper, drifting in from beyond our system with traits that mocked our categories. It was both comet and not comet, both asteroid and not asteroid, both natural and in whispers possibly artificial. Its identity seemed suspended, blurred, as if it belonged not entirely to this universe of rules, but to another where the rules are different. Could the strange contradictions of Atlas be the faintest echo of a multiversal crossing, a shard shaped under physics alien to our own? In cosmology, The multiverse is invoked to explain the improbable. Why are the constants of our universe so finely tuned for life? Why does the vacuum not collapse? Why do laws of nature appear both fragile and precise? The answer, some argue, is that we inhabit one bubble among many, and only in such a bubble could observers exist to ask the question. But if such other universes exist, then boundaries between them may not be impermeable. Matter could drift across the seams, a traveler arriving in disguise. In such a framework, Atlas might not only be interstellar, but interuniversal. Even within speculation, the decoy hypothesis intertwines here. For what better way to mask a crossing than to cloak it as something ordinary? A fragment of stone disguised as cometary debris could slip unnoticed across the veil. Humanity, with its limited instruments, would argue endlessly about whether it was natural, while the truth multiversal or intentional passed beyond comprehension. Skeptics, of course, bristled at such thoughts. To invoke the multiverse in connection with Atlas is to leap far beyond evidence, but speculation need not claim certainty to carry weight. It reveals the extent of human unease, the desperation to explain an object that resists explanation. In its contradictions, Atlas seemed to invite not only cometary theories, but cosmological ones, drawing imagination into the widest possible frame. The philosophical reflection is sobering. If Atlas were indeed a fragment from another universe, then its very presence mocks the notion of boundaries. If it were a decoy, then the deception itself may point toward players operating on scales beyond human comprehension. In both cases, the object becomes a symbol of uncertainty, a reminder that reality may be layered, that appearances may be masks, and that humanity's definitions may be provincial, blind to truths that spill across universes. Thus, Atlas becomes not only a cometary puzzle or a fragment of another star, but a speculative emblem of the multiverse. Its contradictions serve as a riddle written in light, a traveler that does not belong yet insists on being seen, a messenger whose very ambiguity suggests it may not even be of this universe at all. Beyond relativity, beyond dark energy, beyond even the speculative reach of the multiverse, there lies the quantum world, a domain where certainty dissolves into probability, and reality itself seems woven from whispers of possibility. In the puzzle of three, Atlas, some saw echoes of this quantum strangeness, as though the object's contradictions were not just astronomical but metaphysical, a reminder that the cosmos is built on uncertainty at its deepest level. Quantum field theory teaches that space is not empty. It seethes with virtual particles, fleeting fluctuations that appear and vanish in intervals too brief for direct detection. The vacuum itself is alive, restless, a sea of invisible motion. Could an interstellar traveler like Atlas be shaped by such fluctuations? Could its faint accelerations, its irregular brightness, be signatures of an interaction between ordinary matter and the restless quantum fields in which it swims? Speculative physicists considered this possibility. Perhaps exotic particles, unseen but hypothesized, altered the object's behavior. Perhaps decay of dark matter interactions nudged its path in ways invisible to telescopes. In such visions, Atlas became not a decoy crafted by intelligence, but a messenger of the quantum fabric itself, a natural but profound anomaly, carrying evidence of physics beyond the standard model. And yet, the metaphor of quantum whispers extended beyond physics. To many, Atlas felt like a probability wave, collapsing into contradictory measurements depending on how it was observed. It was comet and asteroid, luminous and dim, accelerating and inert, all possibilities held in suspension, like a particle that is wave and point at once. Its ambiguity mirrored the uncertainty principle itself, where observation changes what is observed, and knowledge always comes at the cost of certainty. This resonance with the quantum fed the philosophical undertone of the debate. If the cosmos is quantum at its root, then ambiguity is not an error, but a truth. Atlas, in refusing classification, may simply embody the universe's refusal to offer clarity. But if it were a decoy, the connection deepens. For what better disguise than to cloak oneself in the very uncertainty the universe already provides? A perfect camouflage would not contradict nature, but echo it, hiding intent behind probability's veil. The unsettling thought is that humanity may never distinguish between these possibilities. To call Atlas a decoy, or a quantum messenger, or simply a shard of alien ice, is to project definitions onto a reality that resists them. The truth may be more complex than any category, lying at the intersection of natural law and perception, of quantum mystery and cosmic imagination. What Atlas ultimately revealed, then, was not only an enigma in the sky, but the fragility of knowledge itself. In its flickering light, astronomers glimpsed the limitations of observation, the boundary where physics meets philosophy. Whether shaped by quantum fields, by chance, or by design, Atlas forced humanity to accept uncertainty as a fundamental feature of existence. Like the vacuum fluctuations that give birth to particles only to reclaim them instantly, Atlas appeared briefly, unsettled certainty, and was gone. Its whispers remained faint, ambiguous, and powerful, a reminder that even in the vastness of interstellar space, the smallest anomalies can echo the deepest mysteries of reality. The passage of 3I Atlas left behind more than fragments of data. It left a question that grew larger the more it was asked. What if it was not unique? If this object blurred the line between comet and asteroid, between natural and artificial, then perhaps countless others had already passed unnoticed, their disguises perfect, their presence unrecorded. To imagine this is to confront the possibility of an endless sky of decoys. The solar system is not empty. Each year, thousands of asteroids sweep across the catalogues of planetary defense surveys, and comets glide inward from the frozen vaults of the Oort cloud. Most are mundane, silent wanderers that obey their classifications without protest. But how many have been overlooked, their subtleties lost in noise? How many objects catalogued as comets carried tails too faint to measure, or moved with accelerations too slight to flag? If Atlas could slip through the cracks of certainty, others may have done so too, without even stirring suspicion. The idea unsettles, because it transforms one anomaly into a pattern. The cosmos may be seeded with ambiguity, a quiet constellation of decoys hidden among the rubble of creation. Some may be fragments of other stars, natural yet strange in their chemistry. Others, if the decoy hypothesis holds, could be deliberate, scattered like seeds across the galaxy by civilizations unknown. 1,000 small travelers, drifting silently, indistinguishable from debris, until examined closely, and even then refusing to confess their nature. The implications reach beyond science. For planetary defense systems, the thought is disquieting. If we cannot fully classify what moves among us, then our sense of vigilance is fragile. For philosophy, the idea carries weight. If we live beneath a sky where masks outnumber faces, then what is truth but another disguise? And yet, there is beauty in the thought as well. To imagine the heavens filled with decoys is to imagine a cosmos alive with presence, however veiled. Each faint point of light may carry stories not only of planetary birth and stellar death, but of strategy, intention, or design. The silence of the night sky becomes not emptiness, but possibility, a theatre of disguises where humanity is both spectator and participant. The endless sky of decoys also mirrors the endless sky of doubt. For science, certainty is always provisional, always vulnerable to revision. If Atlas was indeed only a fragment of ice and dust, then it still served as a reminder of how little we know of interstellar matter. If it was a decoy, then it revealed how easily appearances can mislead. In both cases, the object became emblematic of a larger truth, that the universe itself is a puzzle, filled with pieces that may never fit. Perhaps the sky is already crowded with such travelers, their disguises perfect, their trajectories silent. Perhaps Atlas was not an exception, but one among countless whispers passing by while humanity looks upward, never certain of what it sees. The thought is haunting, and yet it is also exhilarating, for to live under an endless sky of decoys is to live in a universe richer than certainty, a cosmos that demands not only observation but imagination. In the end, the mystery of 3i Atlas reflects as much upon humanity as it does upon the cosmos. For when faced with ambiguity, we reveal not only our tools of measurement, but our deepest instincts, our need to assign meaning, to weave purpose into silence, to turn fragments of light into stories of intention. Atlas, whether comet, fragment, or decoy, became a mirror in which humanity saw itself. Why do we so quickly leap to the possibility of disguise? Perhaps because deception is woven into our own history. From painted camouflage on the battlefield to misinformation in politics, from masks in ritual to illusions in art, humans are creatures who both practice and fear misdirection. To imagine that an interstellar object might also deceive is to project our own strategies onto the cosmos, an act of reflection as much as speculation. Even in science, the impulse toward narrative is strong. A faint smudge of light becomes a visitor, a messenger, a phantom. In this, astronomers echo poets. The object is no longer just ice and rock, but a participant in a drama, a symbol of something larger. Atlas, in its ambiguity, gave license for imagination to flow, reminding us that science and myth are not separate but intertwined, both born of the same hunger to understand. This hunger reveals vulnerability. To see purpose in the purposeless is a bias of perception, one that has shaped religions, philosophies, and now even astronomy. Perhaps Atlas is nothing more than debris. But to us, it cannot be only that, for our minds refuse to accept indifference. We need stories, and when the sky withholds them, we invent them. In this way, the decoy hypothesis may be less about aliens than about ourselves. And yet, this reflection does not weaken the mystery, it deepens it. For if Atlas is only rock, then its ambiguity shows the limits of our instruments, the boundaries of knowledge. And if it is more, if it truly is disguise, then it confirms that our suspicions were not mere projection, but recognition. Either way, the encounter forces humility. We are reminded that we do not control the cosmos, that our gaze is narrow, and that our interpretations are as fragile as the light we measure. Thus, Atlas becomes a parable. It teaches that ambiguity is not failure but essence, that the unknown is not a gap to be filled but a reality to be lived with. In its contradictions, we see the contradictions of our own species. Curious yet fearful, rational yet imaginative, forever suspended between the desire for certainty and the inevitability of doubt. The reflection lingers. Perhaps the sky does not deceive us, but rather reveals us. Perhaps every decoy we imagine is a projection of our own insecurities, our own longing for purpose in a universe that remains silent. And yet, to project is also to dream, and dreaming is itself a kind of discovery. By the time 3i Atlas faded into the void, slipping past the reach of telescopes, science was left not with conclusions but with thresholds. On one side stood data, orbits, spectra, brightness curves, the raw numerics of a faint, fast-moving body. On the other stood imagination, theories of exotic ices, whispers of alien probes, the decoy hypothesis that lingered at the edge of credibility. Between them lay a chasm, the space where certainty falters and wonder begins. Astronomers are trained to build bridges across such chasms with models and mathematics, yet every attempt to classify Atlas collapsed under contradiction. Its faint coma was too weak to explain its accelerations, its brightness too erratic for a stable fragment, its silence too complete for a comet, and its activity too real for an asteroid. It existed at the threshold of categories, as though designed to resist them. And so humanity found itself standing on the edge of certainty. Some leaned toward the safety of the known, framing Atlas as a shattered remnant of a comet too fragile to perform. Others leaned toward speculation, wondering aloud if the ambiguity was not chance but purpose. In both directions, the ground was unsteady, for evidence was fleeting, the object already gone, leaving only archives of fading light. This balance between explanation and wonder is not new. It has haunted every age of discovery. When the first telescopes revealed moons orbiting Jupiter, they shattered the certainty of an Earth-centered universe. When Einstein described space and time as pliant, the solidity of Newton dissolved into relativity. When dark energy was named, the very fate of the cosmos turned uncertain. Each revelation forced humanity to admit ignorance, to balance knowledge with humility. Atlas now joins that lineage. Its ambiguity may never be resolved, yet it remains a marker proof that the sky can still resist our definitions, that our categories are temporary scaffolds, not eternal truths. The decoy hypothesis, whether correct or not, reveals the depth of our unease, the suspicion that what we see may not be all their island. Even the idea that an object could be designed to mislead reflects our awareness of how fragile knowledge can be. Standing on the edge of certainty, humanity confronts two truths at once. The first, the universe is governed by laws, discoverable through observation and reason. The second, the universe forever exceeds those laws, presenting enigmas that resist even our best instruments. Atlas embodied both a body that obeyed gravity yet defied classification, a presence that was real yet unreadable. To linger at this edge is uncomfortable, but also necessary, for it is in uncertainty that discovery is born. If Atlas was natural, then we have glimpsed a class of objects stranger than imagined. If artificial, then we have brushed against the presence of intelligence beyond Earth. In both cases, the lesson is the same. Certainty is not the goal, but the illusion. The true goal is wonder, sharpened by doubt, balanced between fear and awe. And so 3I Atlas leaves us not with answers, but with a posture humanity leaning forward at the threshold of understanding, aware of its fragility, yet unwilling to look away from the sky. When 3I Atlas finally slipped into obscurity, vanishing beyond the reach of even the sharpest telescopes, it left behind a silence that was louder than revelation. Objects come and go, comets flare and fade, asteroids cross the sky in predictable arcs, but this visitor departed as it had arrived, ambiguous, evasive, a riddle that refused to resolve. What remains is not certainty, but a shadow, a lingering sense that humanity had brushed against something greater than comprehension. In that silence, the object became more than a scientific puzzle. It became a metaphor, a symbol of the unknown that hovers at the edges of all discovery. A decoy, perhaps, if one dares to imagine intelligence hidden within its contradictions, a relic of another star, if one prefers the comfort of physics, or simply a mirror, reflecting the fragility of human knowledge, showing us how little we truly grasp of the universe we inhabit. Philosophers have long said that ignorance is not absence but presence, the presence of possibility, of questions that ignite thought. Atlas embodied this truth. By refusing classification, it forced humanity to ask, what does it mean to recognize something we cannot define? What if reality itself is woven with disguises, illusions, and masks. What if the cosmos is not only a field of forces but a field of intentions, some natural, some perhaps not? The emotional weight of this realization is profound. To look upward is to seek answers, yet Atlas offered only questions. It reminded us that the night sky is not a backdrop but a living theater, filled with actors whose roles remain hidden. Some may be fragments of shattered worlds, others may be more. To stand beneath that sky is to live with the possibility that the universe does not simply exist, it watches, it misleads, it teaches through enigma. And so, humanity is left not with resolution, but with reflection. Atlas fades, but its presence endures in thought, in the uneasy recognition that not everything seen can be explained, and not everything unexplained is meaningless. Perhaps it was a decoy, perhaps it was not. What matters is that it forced us to confront the limits of certainty, to accept ambiguity not as failure but as truth. The phantom is gone, but the questions remain vast, unending, like the stars themselves. Now the pace slows, like breath after long exertion. The enigma of 3i Atlas recedes into the deep corridors of memory, its trail absorbed by the silence of space. The numbers have been written, the models debated, the theories spun like threads, but the object itself is gone, leaving only stillness. In that stillness, the story softens. Imagine the sky quiet again, vast and indifferent. The faint traveler no longer crosses it, only stars remain, steady in their ancient glow. Whatever questions Atlas carried are folded back into the fabric of the universe, hidden beyond reach. The human mind, restless though it is, cannot follow it forever. There comes a time to set the puzzle down, to let the unanswered rest in peace. In this calm, what lingers is not fear but wonder. The knowledge that interstellar objects exist, that they visit, that they whisper of other suns, this is enough to cradle the imagination without demanding conclusion. Perhaps they are decoys, perhaps not. The truth is less urgent than the humility they inspire, the reminder that we are still beginners beneath the sky. So let the mind ease, like waves slowing on a shore. Let the mystery of Atlas dissolve into the larger mystery of the cosmos itself, a mystery too vast to be solved in a lifetime, yet gentle enough to be cherished in silence. The stars remain above, untroubled. The earth turns, steady. And in that turning, sleep may come, carrying with it the comfort of knowing that the universe, however strange, is also endlessly beautiful. Blow out the candle of thought. Let the darkness settle. The phantom has passed, and the sky is calm. Sweet dreams.